Hello, and welcome to The Richness of, a show that hopes to inspire you to live a happier, a healthier, and a more fulfilled life. Today, I'm really excited to have Pat Laurie with me. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Pat is the author of Be, she crosses out perfect, authentic on video, the playbook. And it's 18 steps to build video confidence, create engaging content, and attract your ideal audience. So, Pat, thank you for being here today. The topic today is really flipping your story.
Right.
And I know that you've done so much coaching with people on how to present on video and how to present in general. You're a fantastic speaker. Will you tell us a little bit about how you flipped your story?
Oh, sure. Well, first I'd like to tell you about what my story was that I needed to flip. So I had this situation as a television news reporter. I was on TV for many years, and 6 years into my journey on television, I suddenly developed this anxiety complex where I would get in front of the lens and be like, oh my gosh, like I can't speak. And it wasn't even fun. I mean, it was terrible. It was terrifying. And it was such a bad complex that it actually forced me to leave the television business and to keep that story secret for 20 years. So my story was that of, I was ashamed, I was afraid to tell that story because it was, to me, I was so embarrassed that as a professional, I would show up and report the news and be live all over the place, and then one day just not be able to do it because I didn't believe in myself. So I finally did flip my story.
So that's interesting. So how did you go from being able to be on TV, and then what was the story that you were telling yourself that maybe prohibited you from wanting to be on TV?
Well, thanks for asking, because there was sort of like an enticing moment. So I was covering this plane crash in New York. It was the TWA Flight 800 plane crash.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, you know, the plane was down at the bottom of the Long Island Sound, and the tray tables were coming up to the surface. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm with all of these New York City reporters. And I was looking around, and I was, you know, looking at all the national news reporters, and everybody that you could imagine was on the scene. And it was like, this is my big moment. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, maybe I don't belong here. You know, maybe I'm not good enough. I'm not good. I'm not as good as this person or that person. I started comparing myself to others, and I literally froze up.
Yeah.
And that was the moment. And then, I convinced myself that I wasn't good enough to be there.
It's that imposter thing that comes in, right? That,
Oh yeah.
Well, and where
it's the
does
imposter syndrome.
where does it come from?
Classic imposter syndrome.
Absolutely.
I think it was, you know, I was 29 turning 30, and I had set in my mind, if I don't make it to network news by the time I'm 30 years old, that's it, I'm all washed up. End of story. Got to find another career. So I think it was like setting this unrealistic goal that I had for myself that really triggered that moment.
Yeah.
And I went in deep with that thought system, and it really did not serve me at all.
I can relate. I mean, it happened to me not even too long ago. I mean, you know, it happens every so often. I think I was speaking at a big event, and all of a sudden, right, the couple of days before, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm not ready to speak. Why was I invited to speak? What if the audience doesn't like me? I don't look ready to speak. And I mean, I was really getting myself off the rails on why I should not be speaking. And then I kind of reminded myself, which I tell myself often, and I say it to clients, I even say it to my kids, it's so important to remind ourselves, right, that you're not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts, right? So I could either shift that story that I'm not ready and perhaps this is not the right timing for me to be doing it, or I could shift the story to, wow, what a great opportunity, and I'm gonna go in and be authentic and speak to my heart, and you know, hopefully I'll connect with people, and the ones that I do are meant to connect with, I will, and the ones that, you know, maybe I don't resonate with, that's okay too.
Well, that's a much nicer way to think about yourself. I always say, like, don't always believe what you think because you might be thinking the wrong thoughts. And our mind is so powerful. I mean, what I have learned through the years is that whatever we tell ourselves gets processed, and then we act on what we tell ourselves. So tell yourself nicer things, because it'll make for a much nicer life.
Yeah, and it is interesting though, I mean, where does this come from, right? These negative thoughts, this critical voice. You know, it reminded me, again, another time I was going for a run and I was replaying a story in my head about the way I handled a conversation. And I was so critical. I was like, you could have done this, you should have done this, you should have done that. And then I remember just stopping and almost laughing and saying, gosh, if any of my friends spoke to me this way, like I would not want to be their friend. Like it's just so negative. But why do we think it's okay to speak to ourselves that way? And again, how do we flip it so that it's not just that one instance, but so that naturally as things occur, we're kinder to ourselves.
Yeah, well, I do think that there's a saying that I've heard over and over is when you're in your head, you're dead. And so it's not a safe place to be sometimes. And I think that we kind of get carried away with our thoughts and thoughts of inadequacy. And especially like growing up as young girls, we didn't have all the tools that are available today. We didn't have all the self-help. We didn't have we had role models, but they were limited, right? And we always didn't have the best leadership. Now it's everywhere. You know, empowerment is such a theme to our young people's lives, which I'm so grateful for. But I think that we have to start changing the narrative inside of our head. We have to start telling ourselves nicer things. Like I always tell people, and some people say, you know, oh, really? That really works? And I say, yes. So I always started with the positive affirmations, the I am, you know, no matter what you're going through in life, say you're going through a divorce. This is what I did when I went through my divorce was, I am smart, I am powerful, I am loving, I am, you know, inventive, I am creative. I would just pump myself up with whatever word I could come up with. And I would try purposely when I was walking in the field or something, walking my dog or jogging around a track, to continuously come up with something positive about myself for the entire time I was out around one loop of a track, like a continuous dialogue. And when you can start to get in the rhythm of seeing all the wonderful things about you, well then the bad things about you start to kind of get tamped down. So it's a very small technique, but it's actually powerful and it works.
Yeah, no, I like it. And I do think it's so interesting, right? Because I was thinking the other day too, like if you go back and you look at the Indian Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, right? It talks about a mind under control is your best friend. A mind out of control is your worst enemy. And you know, I've talked about this before, but it's fascinating that it's not just in today's day and time that we do this to ourselves. This has been going on forever, right?
Oh,
and
of
it's
course.
something that, you know, we're still all struggling with. And I find it fascinating because, you know, I have a friend who is, you know, one of the top divorce attorneys in LA, Beverly Hills area. And like, to see him, you'd think he is the epitome of confidence. And we were going for a walk, a nature walk, and talking, and he was sharing some stories about how he second guesses himself at times, or always wants to be better, right?
Yeah.
And I think we all want to be better, and I think it comes from that trait too. But it's funny, I think that, you know, no matter who you speak to, people are always trying to, you know, improve and be kinder to themselves. It's so important. And to know that you're not alone, it's not just you that is thinking this way. A lot, you know, we all do it to some extent.
Yes, we do. And I think that we can all, especially when it comes to things like public speaking or being you know, in front of the camera like we are right now, it's so easy to beat yourself up. It's so easy to believe that you're not enough, to believe that you could have said it better, you could have done it better, you could have presented something better, you know. But the real secret is not being perfect. And I think that's where I got really hung up. So I wrote the book, you know, Be Authentic on Video on purpose. Not be perfect on video. And I think that especially in the news business, we fall into that tendency when we are a presenter of let's be perfect, because we have to be credible and we have to have people, you know, sort of revere us. But it doesn't really work that way in real life, because the more authentic you can be, the more that you can just kind of like, you know, be yourself and you know, let your hair get out of place and kind of like sit the way you want to, and you know, just kind of like loosen up. It's just, it also resonates so much more. You know, because we're not these perfect little mouthpieces, right? We're humans, and humans are, you know, inherently imperfect.
And I think that's where people really connect with you, and I think that's where the charm and people really like you, right? It's hard to like somebody that's absolutely perfect because you're not relating, but I think people almost love you even more or more open to you.
I believe that.
If you're not perfect, if you are authentic, if you're real, right?
I tell people if you're quirky, show your quirkiness, because that's part of your personality. And that's what draws people to you, is the way you show up. I mean, think about all the influencers. We've got funny influencers, we've got sexy influencers, we've got charismatic influencers. Everybody has some kind of a personality trait. And that's a wonderful thing, because we don't all want to be carbon copies. We don't all want to be some AI version of ourselves. We want to be the real thing.
Yeah. And I think when you're the real thing, too, you connect with people that are like you, too, right?
You do.
I remember being at an event and hearing one of the CFOs speak, and he was dressed almost in like a country outfit, and everybody was like, where's your suit and tie? And, he made an interesting point. He had said, I'm just tired of showing up for the board meeting and being this person, and then showing up for my employees and being a different person, and then coming home and being a different person for my wife, and then being a different person for my friends, and a different person for the kids. And he said, I've decided I'm just going to show up like me all the time, and this is who I am. And to me, that really resonated. I thought that was really, a great message, and I really thought for him as a leader for his employees, what a fabulous message, right? Be yourself, be authentic.
Absolutely is. And people will connect with you so much more, and quickly too. And then they might even see a little bit of themselves in you, which creates another level of connection. And so that's why, you talked earlier about flipping your story and how you can flip your story. And so I find that when you're stuck in a story, I sort of equate it to, because I've lived my life in television, right? Being on a set, being a photographer, but only using, let's say, a fixed lens. When you're using a fixed lens, you can't zoom in, you can't zoom out, you're stuck with one perspective. And what if that perspective is wrong? What if that perspective is a little cloudy? What if that perspective is a little distorted? Right. That's the only view you're seeing. You need to filter that out. You need to add more light in. You need to change the view. And so when you do that, you can start to step away from yourself and really sort of identify all the things that make you wonderful and all the things that you're passionate about. And when you can connect to those wonderful things that light you up, that's when you're going to see a clearer path forward. And it's worked for me. And it can work for any story that you're in.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel, too, that it's where we focus our energy, right? So if you look for opportunities or things that you like about yourself, you'll find them. If you look for obstacles or things that you don't like about yourself, you'll find them. So again, it's kind of what we talked about, flipping your story, and is where do you want to put your focus?
Absolutely. And I tell you, the benefit of flipping your story also is not only for yourself, but to help other people. Because once people learn about your story, they realize that, you know what, I'm not alone. This is me too, and maybe I can do this. And then it can be like a ripple effect, helping other people. So that's the importance of it too.
Well, and that's why I was so excited to have you on today, because I think when we were trying to discuss ideas for the richness of, and you said flipping your story, I think one of the things that resonated for me too was you said, oh, well, I waited a while to flip my story, and I want to help others flip their stories sooner. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so it literally took me 20 years to reveal the story and then flip it. And the moment I did that, it actually was about 4 years ago, right around this time. It was during the pandemic in 2020, when all of a sudden I thought, okay, the world's going to end. It didn't end, obviously, but it felt like it was kind of ending. Everything was shutting down. People were shuttered inside, and our world was changing so quickly, and we had no way to communicate. And I thought, you know what? If the world's going to end, I'm just going to reveal this story. I'm going to just fire up a Facebook Live and say, here I am. Guess what? I've been hiding something for a very long time. And when I did that, it was so liberating. And I just told people the whole story. I'm like, I'm getting it out there, and I reveal the story in my book as well, because I think when you can talk about something that you're so ashamed about, it makes the shame so much less. And then other people came out of the woodwork from around the world, because Facebook Live, anyone can connect with you around the world. And they started to see their story and share their stories and say, oh my gosh, thank you for telling me that, because I too am suffering from this. And so it made me feel really good, and I wear it now like a badge of honor. I really do. It's part of who I am. I'm not embarrassed, and I hope that you're not embarrassed. Someone out there listening to the story is not embarrassed about whatever story that they are going through. You gotta flip it, and you come out the other side, and you're so much stronger for it, and you just feel happier that you've done it, and
Sure.
And your life is richer. Really, it is.
So how did you flip it, though? Because I guess you said that really that turning point was when you were in New York and you were with national reporters and you were thinking, well, maybe I'm not good enough, right? So what was the story you flipped?
Well, the story was, that was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, for the last 20 years, I have a video production company, Headline Production. So what happened was, when I left the news business, Well, the flip story was I started my own company at 29 years old. And so it wasn't a failure. It actually was a stepping stone to something else. So that's the way you can look at it as well. And then as I reviewed the last 20 years of my life, traveling internationally, covering all kinds of celebrities and dignitaries, going around the world, interviewing, fishermen in Alaska and Malala on a cruise ship in the Caribbean and all these other people, I started to say, you know what? I've had an amazing life, and this is not a story of failure. This is really a story of success. So maybe I was telling myself the wrong story back then, and maybe I didn't have the tools, to look at all the good that I could offer the world. Maybe I was putting these really unrealistic expectations on myself, and how did that serve me, really? It didn't at all, because even in cocktail parties, I remember I'd be out with my friends, and we'd be around like a circle of 4 or 5 people, and I would be afraid to speak up because I didn't want all the attention to be on me, because I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get nervous. I'm going to clam up. So it just was just a bad story that I needed to step out of.
Well, I love that you're sharing this, and it's funny because I've known you for many years now, and I would never imagine you hiding, right?
And no one can ever imagine that you're hiding a story and for me, I was so ashamed. I'm like, I'm going to come out with this story and I'm going to lose all my credibility. But you know what? It doesn't diminish anything that I've done in my career or to build up my business by telling the story. In fact, I believe, my argument is that it'll do just the opposite, because the more vulnerable you can be, and there are parts of the story that I don't tell, and that's my choice. And I don't want to call it strategic vulnerability, but you can decide what you want to filter out and tell people. But once you reveal your truth, it really does open up another world for you.
Yeah, in the book that I wrote, The Richness of Divorce, which was my first book, I quote Jewel in there, and there's one of the lines in her songs that I've always loved, and she says, sometimes light is the darkness most feared. And I think it's kind of what you're saying. I think once we bring something to the surface, we bring it to light, it's really not that bad.
It's a great quote.
Right?
It's a great
quote. Isn't that beautiful?
It is a beautiful quote, and it's really, it's true. And there's also a big fear about letting this secret out and what's going to happen. But it was such a relief,
Yeah, no, it is.
And flipping that story was a relief. And I've continued to flip other stories in my life as well. I'm actually a divorced woman myself, but I've flipped it to have a very great relationship with the father of my child. And it's a wonderful story. And, that's just the way that I want to live my life,
right,
in a positive light. I really don't want to be surrounded by negativity. So I want to do it my way, and I encourage people to do it their way. It doesn't have to look a certain way.
Right.
What feels right for you?
No, I think that's so true. And I love what you said about divorce, because I feel the same way. I feel that it doesn't have to be this, difficult relationship. It could be done with love and grace. And I think that the kids win. I think you win. I think your former spouse wins. I think everybody wins.
We all went skiing this weekend, actually. The 3 of us went skiing together as a family, and it was a wonderful experience, for all of us, I think. To really kind of remember the good times and sort of be able to spend this new chapter,
together. And nobody has to miss out. Nobody has to miss out on the ski weekend.
Which was the best part, too.
I do love that.
So that's another story flip right there.
Absolutely, it is. When you talked about the how you would go in nature and give yourselves the I am this. There's these things that I found online, which I love on YouTube, where you can kind of, I am in there for sleep meditations, and they give you, as you're sleeping, you can do a 3-hour one, you can do a 6-hour one.
I have listened to those,
beautiful
actually.
messages, and I do fall asleep with them sometimes, and I do find that subconsciously I wake up a little bit lighter, a little bit better. So I think that you're right, though, about telling yourself that I am whatever loving I am, whatever it is that message that you want to give yourself is, so it does sink in. And they do say that, the last thing that you listen to before you go to sleep is really what kind of bakes in your mind the entire evening. So how important, that's a great time to start reprogramming and maybe flipping your story.
Absolutely. I do listen to a lot of meditations myself. And someone along the way. You know, probably when I was listening to a meditation right before bed, I heard, you know, wake up and say, you know, you're going to put your 2 feet on the floor and say, today is going to be a great day. And it really does frame the way that you approach the day. You know, you can look in the mirror and say, this is not going to be so great, or I don't know, you know, I'm facing some kind of storm ahead of me. Or you can look and flip it and say, today's going to be a great day. And with that attitude, I feel like that's a good way to step into your day.
Oh, I like that.
You know?
I like that. And it's true. And you know, days when you look and you see your agenda is like full and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get through today. I don't know. And I think you're right. I think if you flip it and say, oh, this is going to be a great day. I'm going to get through the first one really well, and then I'm going to keep moving on, and I'm going to
It's all about your attitude, right?
It really is.
It's
it
how
really
you frame everything. It's how you show up if you have a smile, like you have this beautiful smile.
Oh, thank you.
And it's, you know what I mean? It's how you approach it. It's how you approach your day, how you approach your life. And I really do believe in the power of positive thinking and the power of positive thought, the power of self-talk and the power of self-love. And that's really a message that I'm also imparting to high school students now as I start to teach them about how to be confident. So I share with them the very sensitive story about my news, you know, moment. Because I think with children especially, there's so many things coming at them, so many different, you know, with all of the social media and so many pressures coming at them. To be somebody, to act a certain way, to look a certain way. And so I'm saying, like, step back and show yourself a little bit of love. Just a little bit of love.
I love that you're speaking to the children about that, because I think that is so important. Because I think as adults, right, if you and I get together, we're pretty authentic and we share what's working and what's not. I think a lot of times, you know, especially the teens, everybody looks so happy. Everybody on social media looks great and their life is perfect. And I think I so worry that sometimes, you know, teens will think, well, why me? Or I'm different, or everyone else is so happy. But they don't realize that it's not just why me. Like, everybody has their own different story that they're navigating, right? And if they could just kind of be authentic and share, I think there's just so much power, right? And like you've been saying this whole time about flipping your story and sharing it. Sharing your story.
And to lose some of that judgment. And I hate to say it, but most of the judgment is self-imposed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So once you can sort of lose that, it just sets the scene for a clearer picture, a nicer, a kinder picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree. When I was in Costa Rica at one of the Deepak Chopra workshops, and his yoga teacher led a yoga. She did a pre-talk and then a yoga class. But it was funny. She was saying, you know, she's giving this conversation to a group of people, and we were talking about that voice. And she said she named her Loca, and she would say Loca, which means crazy in Spanish.
Oh, yeah.
She'd be like, Loca, I'm driving the car, so please, you know, stop talking. And she's like, if the negativity would continue, she'd say, Loca, I'm going to have to ask you to get in the back seat now. And she said if the voice continued, she'd say, Loca, I'm going to have to ask you to get out of the car soon if you don't stop.
So funny.
But it's funny, that was her, like, loving, kind, gentle way of kind of making it, you know, humorous, but like knowing that that story is not real.
And you know what that reminds me of? A friend of mine said to me, stop being mean to Pat. You know, just pretend that a girlfriend is talking to you. And would you ever say that to somebody else? That would sound pretty mean.
Yeah.
So stop being mean to Pat. And I was like, oh, okay. Stop being mean to Pat. I can do
Beautiful.
that.
No, that is a really good check-in point. And I think I almost get teary-eyed when I think of or they say, think of that little girl, right? Like, think of that little girl. And when I think of her, I'm like, oh my gosh, how can anyone be so mean to her, right? Like, how can I speak to myself that way?
It is a mean thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love your message.
Step outside
today.
yourself. Look outside the frame. Widen out and see that that's not nice. Reframe it.
Oh, Pat, you are amazing. So let me ask you, how does the audience, how does somebody get a copy of your book?
So Amazon, you can buy Be Authentic on Video, the playbook on Amazon, and it really is like a how-to on everything from mindset to setting up your shot to what to talk about. It's on video, but it certainly does apply to in-person as well.
Well, I can't wait to read it. I am so excited. And I can't thank you enough for being here, and I can't thank you for being as authentic as you have been and sharing with all of us your wonderful story and how you flipped it.
Oh, thank you so much. If I could help one person by sharing my story, it just makes me feel good. So thanks for having me on today.
Well, I'm sure you're going to help many, Pat. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.